Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And good evening, everybody. I am your host, RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And tonight we have a very special guest with us who knows a little something about the world of comics, a little something that got him all the way to being a New York Times bestseller with many of his work. I would like to welcome to the stream tonight Mr. Kazu Kibuishi. Kazu,
Hey.
how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
And because I need a wingman on something this momentous, I've also brought in Justin Dutton, the writer of Unstitched, to kind of walk me through this minefield of graphic novel making. Justin, how are things in North Carolina tonight?
Man, they're doing good. Thank you for having me.
Well, we talk with a lot of different people who are making comics, Kazu, and I have not talked with anybody who does manga or anything like that, and I don't even know if Amulet or Copper count as that. And I've read both of them, and they read pretty straightforward to me, so I didn't see the difference. Maybe you can enlighten me a little bit on that.
Well, yeah, manga is technically just comics. So like manga is Japanese for comics. So I suppose even Spider-Man would be considered manga. So if you're in Japan, you'd call that manga because it's comics. But I understand the distinction. I think there's a sense of different types of genres, that you might find in manga and Japanese comics. Mostly, it skews to just a wide range of readers. Manga can be for the smallest kids and also for the oldest readers, out there. And there's so much. The comics are so popular in Japan, or have been for the last 50, 60 years, that they were able to cater to niche markets all over the place. In America, comics by themselves have been somewhat niche. So I think that there's this, sense of like there aren't that many comics in Japan in the United States, I guess is the and that's the thing, is that there and I think a lot of that has to do with back with the Comics Code Authority and different types of all the political stuff that was going on behind the scenes for comics in the 50s, 60s, 70s kind of limited the growth of comics in the United States. I think, American audiences were a little more averse to pushing ahead, so you only had, like, if you made a book that was different, something like Mouse or something, it's considered something off the beaten path, even though I would say that someone could read Mouse by Art Spiegelman and not be a comics fan and still understand it and get it. So yeah, I don't. So I guess technically Amulet could be manga, but I think that genre-wise, I don't think people would consider it that. I'm in middle grade fiction, middle grade graphic novels. I think I suppose it's a genre now. People look at it that way, and so I'm part of a whole new thing, and I wanted to be a part of that. I actually had quit comics when I was young, partly because I didn't see this type of book. I didn't see anything like Amulet on the shelf. And so I had a good day job, and I was doing well outside of this. I was working in film, I was working in architecture, and I came back to comics because it's just, I think it's something that I could do really well. So I felt that it'd be a waste if I didn't.
Well, you're definitely working in the larger market segment of comics because I've been a comics reader for almost 50 years now. I learned how to read before kindergarten because of the Superman comics garnered from my local barber shop,
Right.
In the magazine rack there. And you're right. It hasn't really taken off in the United States as much of a. Not only has it not taken off the way it did in Japan, but it's actually derided and looked down upon. It was always treated like that person's reading a comic book. We should talk very slowly to this person because it speaks to their reading level. When in actuality, the comic medium, when done right, it's the only medium that can tell stories that other mediums simply can't if they're done well and they're done correctly. You've got the words and you've got the pictures, which means both halves of your brain are engaged in this story that you're telling, as opposed to just having it spoon-fed to you from a screen, or working the other side of your brain with a book of all text.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. Yeah.
So what made you get into comics? And Justin, jump in any time here. You don't have to.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm a little at all. Just
He's used to being the one interviewed.
a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's all right. No worries. So what got me into comics? I've been drawing comics since I was 5. So I mean, if I had to go all the way back, it was just reading comic strips. Whether it's Heathcliff or Garfield or Marmaduke or Family Circus and things like that, and Peanuts, of course. I would pick up collected volumes of that wherever I could, usually at the Scholastic Book Fair, when I was a kid. And so I drew my own cartoons. I had a porcupine character. I wasn't a funny strip guy. I did funny strips for a while. Actually, I got so into Evan Dorkin in high school. I started. I created a couple of characters named Clive and Cabbage, and it was essentially a ripoff of Milk and Cheese. And I was a punk rock ska kid. So I just made the super violent, super just. I don't know. It was just an anti-authority everything type of comic strip, and that's kind of how I started going with comics. Was doing stuff like that. I saw that if I wanted to get jobs when I was around middle school, I had a friend who taught me how to use a crow quill and was showing me a lot of superhero comics, and I wasn't into those until I think the only connection I had with superhero comics early on was that I remember picking up an issue of Namor, the Submariner, that John Byrne had done, and it was I think it was the Headhunter issue with the Headhunter on the cover, the Annie Lennox looking character on the cover. I don't know if you remember this.
I remember some of the run.
Yeah, and so that comic. I remember thinking, wow, this is actually really cool. I didn't think that I would be into the superhero comics, but I remember picking up some of those issues early on in the supermarket, and I started thinking maybe I can do this. Maybe this is be kind of fun. So I started drawing superhero comics in middle school, high school, and I actually ended up I got offered some a small side gig at Extreme Studios when I was in high school as to help them do background inking.
There's a blast from the past.
Yeah, and I actually ended up not doing that. I ended up deciding not to work on comics because I still hadn't read a book at that point that I thought, oh man, this feels like the cinema that I love, like the movies that I love, or this feels like literature. I didn't see that much of that around, so I decided that I would switch away from comics. Actually, after I got asked by some really nice guys over at Extreme if I wanted to do some work with them as a kid, I'm sure it was just an intern thing. I wasn't going to get to do all that much, but they were just really nice. The guys at Extreme were super, super nice. I decided, instead of focusing on comics, I think I'm going to go to film because I wanted to make something that felt like a little more perennial. I think that's what I was looking for. Things that would just stick around. Comics were made so disposable for a short time. I'd say like back in the golden age of comics, those are perennial reads. You can go back to, like Jack Kirby comics and still feel the energy that those kids may have felt back in the day. So it kind of lasts a lot longer. And I didn't see a lot of that happening in the 80s and 90s. I felt like 90s comics people weren't going to read 10, 15 years from when they were produced. Now, so I wanted to make something that would be around 10 years after it was released. And Amulet was released in 2008. So, and it's at the height of its popularity now. And it's been over a decade. So, like that was what I was looking to do, and I didn't see anybody doing that model except for Jeff Smith.
Yeah, Jeff Smith.
Yes, and then I found Jeff Smith's work, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the thing. Like this is what I want to do. I want to make something like Bone. Then I read Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, and I thought, oh wow, now this is really what this is like. This I have to make something like Nausicaa, but like put it out there, for people to see. And it wasn't like for Miyazaki, I believe Massacre of the Valley of the Wind was essentially a hobby that he did, like something on the side that he did on the side, and he turned it into a movie, which was, I mean, that was his day job, is to make movies. So I assumed that I would still be directing animated films, because the last job I had, I was directing commercials and game cinematics and developing a feature for Walt Disney Feature Animation in early 2000s. And I thought that was going to be my day job, and I was going to just do comics on the side. What ended up happening is that I found a way to continue to do comics full time, and so then I switched over to that. So
Yeah.
and so Amulet is all of that.
When I hear people say, "Oh yeah, no, that was just something I was doing on the side. I was just playing with that," and it turns out such a masterpiece of art. But yeah, I've heard this from a number of people here, where they say, I had to get into storytelling because I couldn't find the stories I wanted to read. I think prime example of that is the guy who did all the Aragon Dragon novels. He'd read everything in the library he wanted to read, and there were no more of them, so he had to make some out there.
Yeah, worked out well for him.
So now that you got out of filmmaking to go back into comics.
No, actually, can I like how did?
Yeah.
Because so filmmaking's kind of a hard thing to like get into, and you said this so casual, like, oh, I read this, and I was like, man, that'd be cool. But now I just went into film, did that for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and just do comics. Like a lot of people are like, I'm trying so hard, and just like I casually just whatever way the wind goes. It's
yeah.
So I guess, how did you make the transition from drawing comics to just going over to film? I mean, resumes go around.
Yeah, well, I went to film school, so I went to college for film. I have a degree in film studies. I had some really good professors. Like I even had John Carpenter as a teacher once. I think that's the one class he taught. I actually got to meet and get to know John, and John and I had some pretty good debates and arguments at the coffee shop during his office hours. And I think it's the only class he's ever, I would assume it's the only class he's ever taught. I think he was trying to teach us a lesson by showing us some extremely violent and vicious films to show us what he wanted to show us what real violence was, and to tell us, like, my films aren't not violent. They're just dumb cartoons. And and it's true. I mean, I actually think they're not dumb. They're awesome. They're like his movies. I think kids can watch almost all of them. I mean, even with horror, I saw Halloween and Escape from New York and all that stuff when it came, like, back when I was a kid, and so I think that his films just have like a cartoon. There's like a cartooniness to it that's, it feels like a comic book. His movies, and I always loved that about him. And I used to tell him too in class, like, John, someday people are gonna look back at your films and think these are some of the best movies ever made. And he's like, what? He's like, I just make stupid monster movies. He's like, no one's gonna. My movies are garbage. No one's gonna watch these and in the future. And I was like, no, you'll see. They will appreciate it. They'll figure out what you had done, but you were just too far ahead. He was like,
you know what though? I tend to like cartoons and comics. A lot of people like that, like Stan Lee. Like like he used that acronym because it's like, one day I'll stop doing comics and I'll do real books. So
yeah. Maybe you can't look at the sun. Like you can't just look at it. You have to like just assume that it's there, and you just have to keep working without like going after the thing you think you're after. I can understand that, and I think that's probably what kind of pushed those guys to keep making better stuff over the years. Is that they didn't ever feel complacent or felt satisfied. I feel that way too. But yeah, so you were saying, like, it's so casual. You just wanted to film everything. So that was my path. I was assuming that I was just going to. I always felt I was going to be successful, whatever it was that I did, because that's how I work. I just work smartly. I try to go about doing things really well, and I didn't want to waste my time, which is one of the reasons why I felt like maybe comics would end up being a waste of time. I wasn't sure. I didn't buy into the idea that they were valuable yet. It took me a while. It took me until I read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud to know that there is a reason why yeah, like it was the first time I read anything that gave, credence to the idea that comics are valuable to our society. Because
And now,
Yeah.
yeah,
because I was put in detention for drawing comics. I was considered a rapscallion, a punk kid. Like I was always disappointing my teachers, according to the they're just like, you're so like, Kazu, you can do anything and you're gonna do this. I go, I think it's important, but I don't.
No.
I can see why you think my super violent comic about a runaway cabbage is not valuable to society, but I feel like there's something here. And
yeah, the understanding comics is really important to understanding that the medium can be more than just illustrated dialogue. Because you can do that. You can do the talking heads and they go back and forth and that's it. But to get that whole involvement of the reader to fill in the gutters between the panels and actually get that illusion of animation going on in their head and be in the story, that takes an understanding of what's taking place here. And now, of course, reinventing comics is what people are discovering left and right, because we have this explosion now of independent comic book makers. If you look at the charts for comic sales for this past year, they show that they're way up in comic book sales, but when you dissect it, it comes into three markets. In order, at the top is Scholastic and the graphic novel formats. The books.
I mean, you have Amulet, which good driving force for that.
Yeah, you get like the Raina Telgemeier stuff, and then the second segment is crowdfunded comics that are being independently produced. So the mainstream is like it's celebrating the rebirth of comics, but it's living in that shrinking segment, which I mourn because that's where I grew up with.
I saw that was occurring early on. Like this is when it was in the 90s, and I saw that it was happening. It was the reason why I decided to change course, because back when I was in high school, I think everyone assumed that I was going to be like Joe Mad, because they're like, he's a prodigy kid, 15 years old, and his stuff looks like Stephen Platt's, and I was like, yeah, and that's how I drew. I could draw like Stephen Platt, like super muscular thing, like huge guns, and I was like making fun of it while I was drawing it essentially, and I had really high technical skill, but I wanted to, I didn't think that it was going to last, and I think that the comics industry often. They react a little too fast to things, and they start chasing the readers. And by chasing the readers, I mean they're chasing the group of people that read the comics in the present day. They're not thinking about who's going to read it tomorrow or the day after. They're thinking about who's reading it today and try to service that audience. But the thing is, if you do that, you overload responsibility to that audience to keep the things alive, because you're not bringing in new readers. And I saw that was occurring, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to eventually collapse on itself, and they'll have to reinvent the whole thing in order to make it work. And I suppose they did by moving into movies, and so turning them into movies that's like where all the business is. And so it's not in the books. People don't if they go see a Batman movie, the first thing they do, they're not going to go to the comic shop right afterwards to buy a Batman comic. They don't even relate the two. Like they don't feel like the same thing. And readers know, they're savvy. They're really savvy about what is the real thing. However, if you did Watchmen, you'd probably sell Watchmen books, because people know that the source material is very much tied into whatever they're watching on TV or on a movie screen.
A graphic novel that was adapted.
A graphic
You
novel.
know what? Speaking of Watchmen, RJ actually showed me a cool thing with the Rorschach issues. Like, what is it? Issues 5 and 6 of the every 2 pages. Did not know that until the other night.
We're talking about and this goes into how panels lay out, and how the reader. Of course, Alan Moore is a black magician. It's the only excuse for this whole thing. The Rorschach
Gibbons too, yeah.
But the layout trick in issue 5 of Watchmen, the Rorschach issue, is that if you fold it to the middle spread, the one where Ozymandias is beating the mugger, and you lift the 2 pages on each side, like so, and just look down at what you got, the panels on each side that you'll see are in a Rorschach. They mirror each other, not just layout, but in theme as far as who's in there and what they're doing. And if you lift those 2 pages and lift those 2 pages and continue on through the book, it's a tunnel of Rorschach. That's just a weird thing that Alan Moore's mind thought of.
No, that's cool. I mean, I wonder if was it Moore or Gibbons that decided to do
Yeah,
that?
that's
'Cause
true.
That's a design. That sounds like a design thing. And so I would assume that Dave Gibbons had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the format of graphic novels partly because of the fact that it does feel like a sculpture that you read.
Yeah.
You know, like it's an object. It feel like this is why I don't like the digital versions of my books. I don't really push the digital side of it. I'd rather people read it in a book format so they know where they are. I want the spatial orientation to be part of the experience.
With my books too.
Yeah, I think you need to like know where you are in the book, you know, and it colors the way you're going to experience that particular sequence. If you're coming towards the end, you're going to think about the book differently as opposed to when you're at the beginning of it. And if you're doing it digitally, you kind of can't see where you are except by looking at like a little progress bar. And I don't really feel that gives you a sense of space. It feels like it's kind of in the ether. And so I love that Watchmen. I actually never knew that about Watchmen with the Rorschach pattern and everything on the page. That sounds pretty. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
The density of the information is so heavy. That's why it plays for so long, for so many years, and it's something that I'm aspiring to when I make Amulet. I try to make these things like things you could read 10, 20, 30 years from now. And that's the hard part of it. Drawing the book is no problem, actually. It's actually very quick to draw. It's just hard to design it, like design the experience of it. Not just like the design of the characters and stuff. That's fun and it's okay. But designing the whole experience to reflect like whatever emotion or feeling I'm trying to get across, that takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's the page. The page communicates something just as much as the panels do.
Yes. Yeah. All of it does. That's why I want to do that's why I do the covers as well.
When I wrote Unstitched, like the mood is one of the things I kind of like think of like, all right, so in this scene, what is the mood? What is the feeling that I want to hit?
And you give directions to the colorist on that kind of thing. Of course, you are the colorist, so you know everything you want to have happen. But if you got out of comics because you saw it shrinking as a market, and then you moved over into filmmaking, was there a watershed moment where you said, "Hey, now is the time to get back into doing the graphic novel, the comic format"?
Well, so I'll say my watershed moment wasn't while I was in film. I actually was in. I never, to be honest, like I wasn't really that interested in going into film. That was not a thing. I just thought it was the closest thing to making stories the way I wanted to in a respectable manner. And so that's why a lot of people in comics go into movies. I think they want to do that. They want like to feel like they're elevating somehow to something a little bit more professional maybe. And that's, I think that was a part of that in my mind. So prior to working in animation, I actually worked at an architecture firm, and that's where I was doing really, really well. I was a graphic designer for a number of architects, and my job was to help sell major projects, just make it look nice to the presentations for like these multi-billion-dollar projects, all over the world. I have to make like some kind of a portfolio and take all the previous projects, make it look good so that we could sell the services of my employers. And I was having a great time. Everybody I worked with, I liked. They treated me really well. I got paid really well. And then September 11th, 9/11 happened. And I remember thinking while I was in the office, thinking, all right, so, okay, we could just die.
Yeah.
Like right now, like it was in the top of a tower. I was working in the top floor of one of the towers in downtown LA. And, always thinking like, why am I up here all this way up? in the sky to just do this architecture stuff. There's no reason to be up in this place. This is to impress clients, I think. And I remember thinking, I don't know if this is worth it. And then seeing the towers go down and everything, I just thought, yeah, is this where I want to be when things go down? Like when bad stuff happens, is this how I want to define? Like when I close my eyes for the last time, will I be proud of myself for having done just a good job, like having a nice job, having made money? Is that enough? And I remember thinking, no, I would be so disappointed in myself for having not drawn comic books because I know that I could do it really, really well. And I even know that at the time, this is like early 2000s, the idea, imagine in early 2000s deciding to make graphic novels for a living. My friends thought it was nuts.
I was going to ask, and I don't know, this might be too personal to get into, but was there a wife or a mom and dad who looked at you and said, "Son, you're making good money at this firm, and you want to go, draw pictures again"?
No, I think everyone assumed that I would draw at some point, and wondering why I was walking away from it. And I think for me, I just wanted to do what everybody else wanted me to do. I'm pretty easygoing, so I don't need to be like the most lauded, the most rewarded. I don't need the attention. I don't need the spotlight. I think people know this about me. I don't, and that's probably why I don't win any awards. Amulet hasn't won a single comic industry award. I'm actually kind of proud of this. So don't say anything. I'm gonna let this slide so that I can get through the whole thing without ever winning one award in comics.
That's not right. I mean, this thing should be up to Eisner and such.
No, every one of my colleagues has won recognition in the comics industry, but I just assume that people don't. I don't know. I think that I'm like an inconvenience to some people, so I think they'd rather me not be seen and known, which is whatever. I mean, my job is to service my readers, and a lot of to be honest, a lot of my readers, not only do they not care about awards, but they're the type of people who would never get rewards. They're the type of people who won't like win contests. They're the ones, who have to work harder than the next person and to get less. So I that's kind of the reader I'm looking to connect with. So if I don't win awards, I think it's reflective of like how I communicate with my fans.
And that's the best reward anyway, because I know several comic book award winners who don't make checks, and making checks is why you're in the business. So. Yeah.
I mean, if you're making money doing anything, it's probably that somewhere in our society they've decided that you are carrying a load of responsibility that they would like you to continue to carry. I mean, it's like if you're an athlete that gets paid well, the athletes that get paid well are the ones who are carrying the team for the most part. And the people who are paying them know that. They're like, this person carries a lot of responsibility and is willing to do it, so we better pay them well. I think the same thing about any field you're in. I think you're going to get paid well if you've decided to take on a load of responsibility that's commensurate to a bigger paycheck. It's gonna come your way. So I don't really worry that much about the financial side of it. My biggest concern most of the time is whether or not I'm servicing the community as well as I probably should, and if I'm not doing it well, then that's when I get worried. Money or no money. Yeah,
Justin, something's going on there.
Yeah. Sorry. I have people over. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Other people walking through that room there.
Yeah. They're walking through the next room, but the walls are kind of thin.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Now I do have a question for you because so I have my own like crowdfunder book, Unstitched, and it's an all ages book. And you mentioned like earlier that you had like that Joe Mad style of drawing when you were younger, like
Stephen
big
Platt.
muscles. Yeah, Stephen Platt. Big guns and stuff like that. Do you ever have like a hard time going, okay, how do I like balance like tone wise and make sure that it's still like kid friendly, kid appropriate, but still try to make it mature where I'm I'm teaching them to read up and not trying to speak down.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I
Amulet.
feel like a lot of kids' books try to speak down and
Sure.
not try to go, hey, you might not get this, but it's gonna help you grow.
Yeah. Honestly, all you have to do is avoid bad language, using guns in your in your comic, and um, yeah, and nudity. You avoid those things, and then people don't really. I mean, they don't really. They don't care that much outside. You know what I mean? It's really just those. It's very
Yeah.
surface things that people consider inappropriate. So I think that I think those types of comics are labeled incorrectly when they say that these are labeled mature comics. I actually kind of think that sometimes it's immature. It's an immature comic, and it's like here's a high level of immaturity. And if you're a mature person, you can handle a high level of immaturity. That's the way I see it. Now, I consider like kids comics today right now a lot of the kids comics are made by people like me who I wasn't considering myself a kids comics guy. I was pretty punk rock. I mean, I I was not like everyone thinks of me as like this, like I don't know, Mr. Miyagi, Mr. Nice old guy type of dude now, and I'm not like and they're shocked when they realize, oh, he's just like a surfer skater kid, who would have been playing Mortal Kombat during his lunch, like too long at lunchtime in high school, which that was me. And so I think that like when I make Amulet, I have to make sure that it is incredibly mature. Like I feel that like putting really complex ideas is a big part of it, because the kids who read it have to go through some really difficult things, and I think I'm cheating them if I don't like recognize that in their lives. So I mean, Amulet 1 begins with the death of the father of the characters like showing up right on the page, and there's blood and everything. He just the car crashes, falls off a cliff, he's dead, and I wanted readers to experience that because that's the trauma that the young girl goes through, to that pretty much defines a lot of the decisions she's going to make through the series. She's going to have to overcome being afraid of losing her family like that, and so you got to show it, and as long as it's not nudity, full of guns and language, I mean, people don't consider that inappropriate.
Yeah, I miss the days when comic books could be violent and they could be sexy in ways, but at the same time, it was the middle '80s, the late '70s, middle '80s. My dad would finish reading a Jonah Hex comic, throw it down. I'd be 12 years old, pick it up, no problem. It was,
Yeah.
Anybody could pick it up and anybody could enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
I agree. Yeah. And that's but the thing is that it's the thing is right now, like kids can't access comics without people putting it in their hands. So the audience, you have two levels of audience. One is the kids. The kids will just read anything and they'll probably be okay. I mean, for the most part. I mean, there's some stuff that I wouldn't let my kids read, right? But I think kids are strong enough to get through and sort information. But there's also the people who buy the comics, which often are the parents or the teachers or the librarians, and so you kind of want to make sure that both sides of that are taken care of, because you don't want to get your teachers in trouble, you don't want to get your librarians in trouble with the parents,
Right.
and the kids in the middle, they just want to read something that they like, and it doesn't matter if what it's about. So yeah, it's more figuring out how to navigate gatekeepers and things like that, and making sure that everyone's cool with it. I think that's a trick with the new with middle grade graphic novels right now.
Yeah.
Being able to navigate
That's been my like big navigation. Because I'm not through like Scholastic. I'm doing crowdfunding on Indiegogo, and I realized, it's the parents that have the credit card.
Sure. Yeah. And, I mean, and if you're a parent like I am, I do appreciate it when somebody thinks of me and my relationship with my kids, to not get in between me and my kids. You know, I think that's really where that's when parents get upset, is like when you get in the middle of the two of them. And my whole thing with Amulet has always been to get the two of them together, to get parents and grandparents and kids like all talking to each other and enjoying the book as well as much as the other, and for them to have a shared enjoyment of this thing, because there's just enough things in our lives that are dividing those generations. And I think generational division is pretty much the root cause of nearly every major problem we have.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, you know, I just want to be one of the guys who just kind of chills out the room, and whatever. So like, if my books aren't, honestly, this goes into the popularity of it too, because everyone's like, hey, how do you make your books popular? I go, well, you know, if my books are popular, that's not necessarily a great thing for the world, because that means that people need more chill out stuff. They need to like chill out because they're fighting a lot. That means my books will do well. It's like if you made Band-Aids, you know, and you sold a ton of Band-Aids, and you're like, yeah, this is great, but that means a lot of people getting hurt. You know, so
But
okay
you know
with
what
it,
though?
like, solving enough problems. But,
But to counteract it though is your world is so rich and textured that, like, even if it's, you know, don't even need a chill out spot, just wanting to dive into, because you know you're gonna get like almost guaranteed enjoyment or entertainment for it. And your graphic novels, they're thick, you know. They're not like a 22 issue, like, you know, 22 page floppy. You know, it's almost like a movie experience each book.
And it's a commitment to start one up. And I mentioned earlier how there used to be the looking down on the adult reader of a comic book, because, you know, it's a comic book. And I'm finding that I'm going through the same thing again because of the scholastic graphics thing. I'm enjoying more middle grade graphic novels right now than I do, you know, what I'm supposed to be reading, you know, the adult paperbacks or the new Grisham hardcover or whatever. I'm sitting here in the cafeteria at work, and it's like, what are you reading? I got this thing from Scholastic. Oh, you're keeping that home? No. I'll sit there and I will, you know, I'll be on the edge of my seat while, you know, Emily's got the amulet going and they're going through this portal. I love portal stories, by the way. Ever since Alice in Wonderland and Anna, Narnia, all that kind of stuff. Or I'll be, you know, I'll be sitting there on the verge of tears in a chapter in a Jimmy Gownley Amelia Rules graphic novel. So they're powerful things, and the fact that they're marketed to kids directly is frustrating to me. They should be marketed to everybody.
Well, I mean, it has to start with the kids, right? Because we got to get new readers too. Like, you know, adults don't get the kind of comics they want if there aren't a whole lot of readers who grew up with comics. And if we're leaving the kids behind, then we don't have new customers. And, you know, and like you want a wide reader base so that you can, because I think everyone goes into the niche books like too quickly. Like they start like, I see that a lot right now. That's one of my big criticisms, is that, you know, I used to do super niche work. I mean, my first comic book series, Daisy Cutter, it's a steampunk western with a female hero. You know, it's like every niche that you can imagine, and it's a violent story. It's not like for kids, and so I you know, it's like Hellboy. You know, like that. I feel that service is a very small but very dedicated group of readers. And I see a lot of comics folks like jump right into the niche. And I remember back then when I was doing Daisy Cutter, I was about to start on 2, and I knew Daisy Cutter could be a big thing if I decided to stick with it. But I saw that we needed to get new readers. I just knew that there weren't enough access points for new readers, and if we don't have new readers, we don't have old readers, and we don't have readers at all. So I switched to Amulet. Like before, or like I stopped working on Daisy Cutter 2 to work on Amulet 1. And I remember I got a lot of blowback for that at the time, because people thought, oh man, he's giving up on us. Like the readers want, you know, adult comics. That's what we want. And I thought, no, like I don't think that's, you know, like I heard the argument that comics aren't for kids anymore, but I don't think they've been for kids for a long, long time. And I think that it's time to switch that up, because again, we just need we need a huge generation of readers who are just used to reading comics like the way that our grandparents and everybody used to read, like Spider-Man and stuff. You know, I don't know any kids who read superheroes now.
Now,
you know,
that's a paradigm shift that I know the comics industry has been working on for a while now, which is, we have to get new readers, as you're saying. But I think a lot of them haven't figured out how to get new readers or how to focus on readers without abandoning the current set of readers. It's less of an expansion and more of a throwaway and switch.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, it's frustrating to watch that too. I see people like fighting over it. It's like fighting over a hill, like just a little ant hill. That's what I see is like the comics fights, like everyone doing these cultural comics fights, and I'm like, what are you guys fighting about? There's like nothing here yet. You guys are just like fighting. It's like fighting over like this little old used car or something. And I'm like, you guys, like we need to first cultivate the land before you can have a war over it.
Yeah,
right.
It's already been salted by the last armies coming through.
So yeah, but I agree with you, So that's one of the reasons I'm trying to make multi-generational comics, just it's like an alternative to like what I see where everyone feels like it's like just like them and their friends against everybody else, and I don't see the world that way. I haven't been like that. I mean, I always liked my grandpa like a lot, and my parents too. I've had to take care of my parents since I was like early 20s. I've had to take care of them with my brother. So I have a very different I just have a different upbringing, very different background, I think, from a lot of the other comic artists. And I think right now, I think that, when you see, like I'm reading, I'm about to do an interview with my friend Jerry Kraft, who did New Kid and his new book Class Act. If you haven't read those are fantastic. I'd like to plug that because anybody who hasn't read it, they're so funny and they're so well written. It's like it's just really good. There's like elements of magic realism and really really good social commentary in a very down to earth, very grounded way. And I think that Jerry's got something really good going. But yeah, reading reading books like this, I feel like it connects family members from different generations. Like you can read Class Act or New Kid if you're 80 and have a great time and laugh and joke around, and then share that joy with an 8-year-old that's in the family. And that's what I think of when I see all ages comics. I think sometimes when people hear all ages, they think it's only for the kids.
Yeah.
But it says all ages. It says all.
Safe for all ages as opposed to appealing to all ages.
Yeah, I mean, publishers are guilty of this too. They're often the ones who think, oh, all ages equals we got to do it for the kids. So it's going to be like, hey kids, hey, we're going to have some fun. And it's like kids don't have fun most of the time. They're upset. They're doing Zoom school. They hate it. They're getting bullied. No one listens to them. They know they're smarter than they're looked at to be, but they can't communicate it. It's like they're stuck in this like kind of semi-broken pod, and they're trying to explain to you that they know what you're talking about, but no one's listening. And so those are the people I feel like a good middle grade graphic novel could connect with and go, hey, don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna get through this, and here's a book that maybe you and your dad can share, and you guys can talk about some stuff, and it'll help. So
we do I
don't see too much of that.
Show. Yeah, we do a show every other Saturday with comic shop owners, and Michael Tierney, who writes for the Overstreet Guide, has brought this up several times. That the trick to writing for children, and he takes this from something that was in the Doctor Who documentary about which you have to write it smart enough for the kids and dumb enough for the adults, so that they can all get together and enjoy it. I just agree with more or less with your assessment. Just like, don't go overboard on the violence, don't throw the nudity in there, and keep the language to normal, polite speak, even if you're angry.
I think and it's another thing too. As a writer, I feel like I work in a medium, so I'm supposed to be in the middle of things. I'm not supposed to be the message. I don't like the medium as the message type stuff. This is where like my friend Scott McLeod and I disagree. I don't think that medium is the message. I do think that for me, I'd rather see this is the way I write my books, and I think this is why it's probably pretty popular. Is that I have characters who make choices and they get they either it doesn't work out well or it does work out well, and I don't judge them for whatever they decide to do. And I think people are often judged for every decision when they're young, they're scared to make any decision because they think they're going to get judged by all their peers, they're going to get judged by their parents, and adults too. They're going to be judged for their social media posts or some nonsense. And so I try to write books that show people just moving from one thing to another, decide they say or do something that maybe you didn't expect. That's what I'm hoping. Like they read Amulet and go, "Oh, I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't." And then you watch as that character either stumbles or climbs because of it. And I think that people can take away what they want from that instead of being told like, "Hey, this is the idea. It has to be this way because I believe it and I'm the author." I see a lot of that too in comics. Like people just trying to force a message. And I think people get messages out of Amulet, but I don't force it in there.
Yeah, see, I think some of the best stories are like that evergreen type feel where it's like, depending on where you are in life and, even different people like, oh, I got this out of this. I got this out of this. Same scene, but they can see two different ways of, how it happened. Like, oh, well, this person's so bad, they did this. Or, well, this person made a mistake, but look at them, they are trying. I respect that. Most people just give up. They're still going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't make them a bad person. It's just they made a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can settle, and accept books that do have a message in it. I mean, a lot of the books out there come out and say, "Hey, coming into this book, this is going to be our message." I have a bigger problem with people who come onto established properties and say, "Oh, I now have the mouth of this established character that everybody loves.
Yeah.
You put my words into it now, and speak with this character's gravitas." But that's a topic for an entirely different show.
Yeah, sure. No, I think people could do with more empathy, and I think that's like what it is with when you're writing really well. When I'm writing well, I know that I'm being empathetic to my characters and allowing, I want to give everyone a fair shake, every single one of my characters. So my villain, like I don't really have villains. I think there's people who make mistakes, who are. The villain is what was it? I was telling my friend, gosh, it's usually somebody who makes a mistake and recognizes it though, and is trying to erase that mistake, but making it worse. And I think that happens so much in life. So watching a character like that get profiled in the book and then having maybe your hero or one of the main characters in your book try to deal with that, I think is very valuable for readers, for young readers especially, who are navigating like the playground and the lunch tables and all sorts of stuff for the first time.
Yeah, like Harry Potter having his Professor Snape moment in the last film, realizing what's been going on for the last 7 years with his villain. Nobody sees themselves as the villain anyway. They all see themselves as the hero doing things for what they assume to be the right reason. Almost. I mean, we have people who rob stuff and they know robbing is wrong and they're going to do it anyway because they can. It's a power trip. But by and large, as a character, no one says, "I am going to take over the world because I'm evil." It's more like, no, I'm going to take over the world because nobody knows what they're doing and I can save everyone. That's a more believable kind of character. Settling in on the technical side of the writing here, when you settle in to write Amulet, you wrote the first book. Did you know you were going to write 9 books? Did you know that this is how they break down? Or is it just sort of I'm going to keep the engine going until I see the end of the road and that's when it stops?
If I knew I was going to write 9 books, I don't think I would have started. To be honest with you, I thought Amulet was going to be my practice run because I had never really done a true graphic novel. Daisy Cutter was a 4-issue miniseries for Viper Comics, and and Amulet 1, the Stone Keeper, was the very first book that I did all at once, like a 192 pages at once. And I remember, like, I mean, I made so many mistakes making that book. Or at the time I thought they were mistakes, but I'm glad I made them because they created my process of making these books. So I actually thought I was just going to do one quick, like, story that was very, it was like a mixture of like a lot of things that like a lot of films that I loved. Like it was supposed to feel like a Spielberg film mixed with Miyazaki and Krzysztof Kieslowski, and all these were the three influences I was bringing into this thing, and it was just going to be one quick, like, hey, we'll just do this thing. And then Scholastic said, can you turn it into 2 books? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do 2 books. And then by the end of the second, I was like, oh man, I don't think the story's done. And then Scholastic came back to me and said, I think this is going to keep going. Can you do 3 more books? And I said, yeah, we'll do 5, So I said 5. And as I was getting towards 5, I was like, I don't know how I can fit everything in here. There's so much going on. I think I need 2 more. So I said, okay, we'll go to 7. And so we got deals for books 6 and 7. And by the time I was at 7, I was like, no way that I'm going to get this done. But I got to put my foot down right now. And I said to them, okay, as I was working on book 7, I was like, there's no way I could finish it on this book. But so give me 2 more, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the last 3 books a trilogy that completes the series. So if you read through the series and then you read 7, 8, and 9 together, you can just read 7, 8, and 9 together by itself, and it should be one like massive, like kind of epic graphic novel. That's what it's gonna feel like.
First.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm working on 9, but 8 is I think people get frustrated in getting to the end of 8 and not having 9 because it really is like stops right in the middle of major action, But I mean, I think 9's gonna be. I don't know. It's 9 has all these things I've been wanting to do in a graphic novel all these years. I haven't been able to because I have to finish them in like 7-8 months. Like to do 200 pages of full color comics, where I'm redrafting it 8 to 10 times. So I'm doing that, like 800, like what is 8 to 10? 16. There's 1,600 pages of like roughs and stuff per book. I just didn't have enough time to make the book as dense and as epic as I knew I could. So number 9, I've decided I'm just going to look away from all the deadlines. I'm going to look away from everybody yelling at me and getting pissed at me because I know they are. And I'm just going to make the graphic novel that I know that my assistant and Jason and I are capable of doing. And this is the first book that we've done that with. We've actually decided I'm just going to make the book the way I know it can be done, and it won't feel rushed or anything like that. And so this is why it's taken so long to do this last book. And you guys will see that something about graphic novels that's pretty neat. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's like a black hole, but it's a weird thing. You can make a short comic feel huge.
Yeah.
Right. You guys know that. I mean, like comic book, like just one single issue is probably like most comics fans' memories of like Infinity War or anything like that. Anything like a Jack Kirby comic, it's usually just like one issue that is like the definitive thing, and it's just got such huge ideas that it's just stuck with you forever. Like some kind of giant metaphysical something idea, and I feel like comics has this weird ability to do that, and I haven't really accessed that yet until this book. So I'm trying to make this book not longer than the other books, but it should feel the biggest by a large amount. I think it should feel huge. So
yeah. I know that Scholastic likes to do the boxed sets of all the books. I tend to think they kind of overdo that sometimes because like get all 5 books. I'm like, there's going to be a 6th book. Why would I want a box of 5 and then a 6th? So I always wait till it's over before I do that.
Uh-huh.
But do you think that you might take all 9 books at some point and do sort of like a director's cut or an omnibus all in one book with like art pages at the back of it to show the process?
Oh, what, a single volume?
Yeah, just a big hardcover omnibus Amulet with like an
Oh
appendix
wow.
with all the roughs and stuff.
I don't think you could get a printer to do it. I got to talk to Jeff Smith. I got to talk to Jeff about the one volume. I go like, how'd you, because like Amulet would be like several hundred pages bigger than that one. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it would be like adding like that plus like a small dictionary.
Yeah, and it's going to be bigger.
It'd be like
pages.
this accordion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's possible. It's possible. It's very probable that it's not possible. But I do want to. I definitely. I have a box set in mind to do. Like, and I think what I could do is I have a lot of material for the making of this particular book and the process of making the Amulet book. So my assistant and I might assemble something that like a companion piece that maybe you get in the box set as like an extra thing. Maybe I don't know. We have to see if I could schedule it in. There's a lot of things going on here. I gotta there's a lot of things I gotta schedule in. That's that requires a lot of time.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
Yeah.
One of those things is like thinking about the movie. So what we're gonna do with that.
Wait. The movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there
Yeah.
was so the Amulet movie had been in there had been movies in development for ever since before the first Amulet book was released. It was optioned in 2007, I believe, just off of like my sketches and binder and everything like that. And that went to Akiva Goldsman's producer, and that was with him for a couple of years, and then moved over to Will Smith and his family. And I worked with his family for a few years over at Warner Brothers. And then it got moved over to Temple Hill Productions, who did the Twilight and Maze Runner movies, and I'd been working with them since 2015. But recently, Fox was bought by Disney, and the project migrated along with all the Fox projects, and it was one of the few things that apparently Fox decided they'd like to continue developing. So then they started developing it. I mean, Disney wanted to develop it, so Disney paid to continue development. And a script was written, and I don't think they were happy with the script. I read the script, and it just didn't seem like Amulet. It seemed like something else. And so I decided to just take the rights back, and now I have it in my hands
Good.
again.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah. Worried because Disney. I love Disney films. Don't get me wrong, but Disney has a habit of taking films like Amulet, like all the Studio Ghibli stuff, and producing it where nobody will ever see it.
Yeah, that's actually what happened. So here's the thing: like the last job I ever had, I was working on a feature film for Disney, and when they were paying me to do nothing, and I didn't. Yeah, so like I was like, wait, so can I work on this? And I was writing and directing, and they're like, I wouldn't. So, I wouldn't do this. I was like, wait, what? And so I think there was a producer there. I think he was trying to protect me from having to do extra work, and I think the idea was that they were killing the project by taking it. So I remember thinking like, wow, like I didn't know they do this.
Yeah,
that's too bad. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I know they do this in the tech world. When companies are bought out, that if they see competition, they'll take it and squash it. You get paid. It's like a friendly squash, right? They pay you good money to go away. And so I assumed that was what was happening. So I decided immediately to sign the rights away to that project to my friends who were working on it as well. I said, you guys, they're not going to let us make it. And they didn't believe me. And I said, no matter what they tell you, they keep telling you that they're going to make this thing. But I'm telling you, I've done my homework. I know the entire history of Disney animation, like from the very beginning and every single project that's been there. I know how this works. Either this gets stuck in development for another 30 years, and somebody else is going to make it, like with Tangled and with Frozen and all these things, which are like 30 to 50 years old. I said, like, it's either going to be one of those in a best case example. In a worst case example, it's going to be one of those things that just gets just shoveled under the bed. And I said that's probably what's going to happen here. I'm going to walk. And so I signed the rights away to the whole thing. So
who has the Amulet rights now?
And then so this isn't for Amulet. What I'm talking about is the Disney movie that I was doing, and so they have I don't know who has the rights to that now. It's not mine, but it's a story that I had written about hamsters.
Were they adolescent, radioactive, and black belt?
No.
Okay.
Is that from G-Force? Is that G-Force?
No. Don Finn has the adolescent.
Are you just talking about like Ninja Turtles?
Yeah.
It was
Okay,
a Ninja Turtle ripoff, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't. It was actually. It was a pretty good film. I think it would have been a good film. The one I was developing was about like these hamsters and these pets in a pet store that are. It was like a remake of The Great Escape, but with pets trying to escape a pet store. And so I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny and good. Maybe somebody will make it. I don't know. It's not mine anymore. I don't really care. But with Amulet, it got optioned all over the place. People were really kind. You know, I liked everybody I've worked with. I got to meet like a lot of different people. And so now it's back in my hands, and I'm pretty happy about that. The reason why I wouldn't have worked on it before myself is that I didn't have time with the schedule that I had on Amulet. I just couldn't. I mean, it was just relentless.
Sure.
For the first 5 books, especially because I was doing, if you remember, Amulet was coming out once every year.
Yeah.
That means I have to go on tour for like 3 months. So 3 months. So there's like only 8 months left where I'm actually at home, and I have to make a 224-page graphic novel, full color, fully painted, and I'm going to redraft that 8 to 10 times. If you do the math on that, like my hours were, I was working from about 9 to 10 a.m. to 4 a.m., 7 days a week.
Wow.
For about 5 years, and that pretty much put me in the hospital. After a while, I just couldn't do that anymore. Once I had like 2 kids.
Oda hours.
Yeah, I mean, I had like, and then my wife Amy was like saying like, this is not good, because like the kids don't see you, and you like, you're working like right across the street, but they don't see you, and I was like, yeah, is it worth it? I don't feel this is not, this is not right. Like I can't establish this as the way to make books. Because if I do, then there's going to be a whole lot of people coming up behind me who's gonna be hurt.
So I'm guessing after book 9, there's going to be a sabbatical period. Where you're just going to brainstorm. So no. Here. Okay.
No. So here's my thing. I think you should have sabbatical. Like you should have the breaks in the process. It should be baked into the process, because you gotta heal your hands, you gotta heal your brain, you gotta heal your body. It's just like, if you're playing in the NFL, imagine if they had to play 7 days a week. I'll bet if they didn't have the science to know that would destroy those guys, they would have tried, because the money's there. Why not play every day, right? It would kill people, right?
Works
in
for
the
baseball.
NFL. What's that?
It works for baseball.
Well, baseball, they know that they can do that because they're mostly just scratching their butts on. The only person that has to worry about that is the pitcher. The pitcher's the only one.
Now they have pitch count and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna by the end of a pitcher's run in a career, they probably can't even lift their arm. I'll bet you that they can't even like reach like the top shelf of a grocery store. By the time they're in their 60s and 70s, because the rotator cuff and everything is like so messed up. I used to be a baseball player, and so I think about baseball all the time when I do my comics and stuff, and think about just how to grip my pencil properly so I can go longer. I want to be like I don't want to be like a power pitcher. I want to be like, like Greg Maddux or Marco Gonzalez of the Mariners, and like have like really good control. So I try to pace the way I can like do my cartoons. So like I would consider someone who does like super ornate art as being like a power hitter or a power pitcher, but somebody who like draws, does that only every now and then, like can throw the heat if they need to, but just generally is more or less consistent and in control. I like thinking about comics like they're sports in that way. So I don't know how we got onto this particular subject, but I'm going all over the place.
Okay, so you've got plans for what's going to come after Amulet then? Is it
I do.
Very Amulet-like, or are you going to go back to getting some of those plat abs on something there, with the more superhero kind of build?
Amulet is kind of a superhero story. I mean, if people really take a look at it, I mean, Emily is essentially Superman in the reverse.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's the same story. This is a Superman story. So the next book series that I have in mind to do is a lot closer to Spider-Man. Because I feel like Emily and Superman have one thing in common. They're far from home, and they're having to make this new home their home, and try to fit in where they are. And the next series I'd like to do is about someone who is at home, like, and is learning about home. Like, and I feel that Spider-Man does that. Like, he's friends with the villains, like, he doesn't, he like in that, like, he's friends with them when they and their alter egos, right? And
Sure.
they're just people that are around. They're just like the local politicians. He's basically a kid who's just having to deal with local politics and stuff. And I wanted to do something like that. It would be something like Spider-Man and like Spirited Away. Kiki's Delivery Service is a bit like that too. I feel like
Nice.
so yeah, so that's where I'm going with the next thing that I have to do. And I think it's going to be really good. I I think people will like it. Plus,
I like the confidence level there.
yeah, I mean,
Well, you know what,
it'll
though? I
be
really like
it'll
how
be like the best thing
like,
ever.
this series, like this Ghibli film. This series is like this Ghibli film. Because I'm like the same way. Because I'm like, all right, so Unstitch, I was like, I'm taking some like Don Bluth, like Secret of Nymph,
Yeah.
Coraline, and like Toy Story, and I'm putting those in a blender.
Yeah, mystical, creepy, mysterious. Don Bluth always had that feeling of that there's something around the corner that's like sad and beautiful and mysterious.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, that's kind of what I try to do with like, my book. And then it's also about teddy bears. So, that's kind of where like the Toy Story aspect comes in. And
That's
Teddy
cool.
bears who come to protect kids from nightmares.
Yep.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
big one coming.
Hey, nightmares might be okay, Maybe you don't want to be protected from them because you kind of have to.
Well, because unfortunately, because I'm just the writer, I don't have the funds, so I had to break it up into two parts. But the way I have it is like the darkness is fear that takes form, and because a lot of kids are afraid of the dark. But in the second part, I always feel like no one's afraid of the dark. As I said, like your fear takes form in the dark, and we realize exactly what like Eleanor's main fear is, and her actually not like defeating it, but embracing what she's afraid of and accepting it and maturing because of it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you have to face your fears. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have gone over an hour here, which I promised Elastic I would not keep you that long because you have pages to get done.
Yeah, actually, I have a parent-teacher conference that I think I'm supposed to. That's what's on.
Ooh.
No, it's okay. Amy's got it handled right now. Yes,
That's important. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep putting out comic books that old guys like me can still sit down and read and enjoy. Because we do appreciate having something like that available.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I gotta rebuy Amulet because I gave the first 3 books to my younger cousin.
Okay.
Last year.
It's a good time to get into it because just because the new one's gonna be not out soon, but it'll be done soon.
You'll be able to start at the beginning and just read all the way through, smooth to the end that way.
That's the way I want people to experience it.
Oh, yeah.
They'll eventually be able to finally experience the way I wanted people to read it, just the whole thing at once. Yeah.
And you know what? Because you're not George R. R. Martin, so he won't gonna wait like a decade.
They won't. I will be done soon, actually. But it does take a long time to get the books out. So there's that too.
I don't mind a George R. R. Martin. It's the Robert Jordan ones that I don't want to happen, where you go so far up that you die before you're done with it.
Oh yeah, no. I'll try. I can't promise. When I'll be out of here, but yeah, I'll be done with this particular series.
But you know
soon.
what though? At least Robert Jordan, he knew, and it's sad to say, but he knew his time was coming. So he actually recorded basically like the plot and outline of
the
like
rest of it. Yeah.
yeah. So they found a like a ghostwriter or whatever who had like similar to his style, and just he was like, I just went off the tapes. Like I had like a little
Yeah.
It's like I had a little bit, but just a little bit because the tapes were pretty detailed.
Yeah. No, hopefully I won't have to do that. And I respect George R. R. Martin for what he's done, because I think you're supposed to let the story come to you for the most part, and that's how I have to write as well. There's just only so many things you can't force the story. As a writer. You can't just make it like force it to work. And people know when it happens.
Yeah.
It has to come to you, and it's hard for publishers, I think, to see that in graphic novelists. Like, they haven't treated us like novelists yet, but I'm hoping that changes soon.
Yeah.
I try to do that, but I'm in the novelist side of things. I write the Remo Williams, the Destroyer books right now.
Oh, you're doing Remo Williams?
Yeah, I'm doing Remo Williams right now.
I loved that movie, the Remo Williams movie.
Yeah, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins.
Fred Ward.
Yeah. And Shane Black is attached to do a new one, but who knows when it's ever going to actually happen.
Wow, okay. That should be fun.
But, Warren Murphy, the guy who created the Destroyer with Richard Sapir, one of the things he would teach in his class was, if you're waiting for inspiration, you're not a writer, you're a waiter. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to just sit down and write whether I feel like it or not, 1,000 words a day, button chair, and go back and fix them later.
I agree with it to a certain extent. I think I've become the kind. I used to believe that. I've changed my tune over the course of the years after I've seen like my work being considered like modern myth. Once I see it like established and it's a big thing, like I realize how much bigger it is. and my student mentality of like, no, just crank and just go through it and get it done. I realized how little I knew about what I was doing. And so I think in the world of Hollywood, there is time. Time is of the essence, and because time is money, it's a lot of money.
Sure.
And so you have to get things done, and I totally get that. And it's why they always look outside of Hollywood to get the material. The material they get from outside, because like when Dave Pilkey, creator of Dogman, is writing, he goes into a cave, a literal cave, and sits in the cave.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he'll kayak out to this island in Japan near his house, and he has a house in Japan, and he has a house over here in Washington and elsewhere. And then he goes out and kayaks to this island. He just sits in there and he thinks about it, and meditates essentially, and to write it. And I totally understand why he would do that. Like I didn't before. I would have thought that's not professional. What are you doing? But for people who have to write literature, like literary work, the stuff that we base all of the work when you're in Hollywood off of, the kernel of it requires that kind of meditative attitude, and like the attenuation to the way the world is. And I used to think that was like all nonsense, and my wife was actually the one who over time told me like, no, that's the important stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was just a punk kid, I didn't care, so I thought, oh, I can get it done, I'm really good at this. Now I'm humbled. I've been humbled. I know why George Lucas went to the hospital. So
the best thing about a cave is there's no Wi-Fi.
What's that?
The best thing about a cave is that there's no Wi-Fi.
Oh, Wi-Fi, yeah, that's not good to have all the time.
Because you sit down to write something, and the next thing you know, what you've written is 150 tweets, and
oh, there you go, yeah,
something in a manuscript page.
Yeah. You could have just made that into a book instead. Yeah, but
Exactly.
but I mean, social media, it's just part of our new thing. I think it's a great way if you're an author to let people know. That your stuff is
let them know.
on.
Let them know, and then get out.
Yeah. No, don't be reading social media all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kazu,
right.
we do appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There'll be links in the chat below to the Amulet graphic novel page. I've got it pulled up. I was going to share it, and I thought there's nothing really on here to share, like, new project, new artwork, order forms, things like that. But definitely go out and get the Amulet books. Do yourself a favor, pick up Copper while you're at it. Copper was one of my favorites. I read it when I worked for another site that I didn't own. So I didn't even get a chance to bring that one up and talk about it. We just
that's a
we
whole
filled the
nother
hour.
show.
15 minutes.
And if you want, I'll send you a digital early copy of Unstitched if you want to read that.
Sure.
I think you would actually like that, Kazu. We just did a review on that one too, and it's a really cool crowdfunded book that's being done here.
Cool. Well, congrats on getting it done. That's great.
Thank you. Well, we hit printers next month.
Awesome. Congrats. That's awesome.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you all for coming. Thank you, people in the chat. We don't have a show without you. Appreciate you all being here, throwing in all the questions that I did not put up on the screen, like, what's your favorite Ghibli film, and what's your favorite kaiju movie? We just didn't have time for all of those. So
yeah, I love all those Ghibli movies.
Well, I'm going